Okay. So, my $1 million idea that could be turned into a $1 billion idea is that anything big or small could be used to make you money, to bring you money. And what I mean by that is like anything that you think of that you possibly could do that could bring in money, write it down on a notebook and write the date when you wrote that idea down. And then when you have a list, or when you have your list, basically at a time where you think, okay, now I could start organizing. You could have 1 or 2 ideas, or you could have 100. Once you feel like you're ready to organize your ideas, organize them into categories. These categories could be different, like genres. Is it sports? Would it be books? Would it be clothes? Would it be flowers, gadgets? Or what else did I write down? Clothes. Would it be like a video? Would it be an actual product? Or any categories that you could think of. And then, when you have those categories, you know what? You could either do categories, or you could write each idea from the one you want to do first to the one that could wait. Just try to organize these ideas in a way where the one that you want to prioritize, the one you want to do first is the one you will do first, because that's the one. The idea that you want to do most is usually the one you should go with first, because it's in your head. And if you don't go do it first, you'll be constantly thinking about it, of like, when can I do it? How can I do it? While you're trying to do your other idea. And that is not effective, since you are thinking of your other idea, the one you want to do, while you're trying to complete the other one. And that's not helping your other idea, because you're not focusing on the idea you're currently doing. So the idea that you want to do, like the most you want to do it, is the one you want to do the most, is the one you should do first. Because even during like the hard times of making this idea a reality, you stick with it more because you're more invested into this idea right now. And once this idea starts bringing in money and you have it organized, so you could be sitting in your home at your house and every second you're getting money. Once it's at that point of where you basically don't have to be working on the idea day to day, because you will have like people working for you to do it and everything, then you could start on the next idea on your list that now you could focus on and not have to worry about your first idea, because you know that it's at a spot where basically you want where your first idea to be a teenager or a young adult, basically, where you don't have to constantly be watching over them like you would if your child was an actual kid. But as they grow up, you don't have to watch over them as much because they're more responsible. And even though your idea doesn't have responsibility, what I mean is that you have people that are taking charge of it, and are working for you to make sure that this idea keeps bringing in money. And then once it's like that, once that business is like that, you can continue on to your other idea and just keep going down your list of ideas until you finish that list. And your list may change because as the more you live, the more you know. So your ideas of what you want to do are going to change. So don't be afraid to take something off the list because it no longer interests you. Okay? You could take it off the list, but always have it like as an option, as like an idea that you possibly could do, but you don't have to do it now. Like your second idea, maybe you thought that was the second thing you want to do the most. If it's not anymore and it's like, I actually want to skip down to, say, your fifth idea. Then create a new list and just put the fifth idea as the second one and the second one either as the fifth one or as the last one. Whatever. It's your list, your life. You can do what you want. It's just a suggestion. And by doing this, writing your ideas down, one, it clears up your mind because you won't be thinking of all these ideas that you want to do to bring in money. And, sorry, this just came to my head. If you want, you could also like write a book about your process of having all these ideas and then going after each and one of them, but at their given time, like how you would go after the task that you want to do most, that idea that you don't want to wait any longer to achieve it, to do it. Write about possibly your process or something. And then where it gets to a point where it's like a young adult, then you can move on to your other idea and start that, you know? And honestly, the next idea you start after your first one may be easier to achieve because through that first idea of accomplishing it, you understand more about the business world and you see what tactics work and which ones don't, or which one work for like entertainment and which one works for construction. I don't know, those were the two that popped into my head because you take two different tactics for those. And it's good to know which things work for one area and which thing works for another. Because not everything is gonna work for every business. Keep that in mind that whatever you create, whatever idea you have, it's okay that they're different, and keep in mind that the process of achieving them most likely will be different if they're different for one another, and that's totally okay. And the bonus of that is that you get to learn more in general. You get to learn more about the business world by having these different ideas that you want to achieve, and it will just make you more well-rounded. Okay. So what else? So I talked about making a book. I think that everyone should write a book because we all have our own stories to tell. And you may be like, oh, I think you're false. I don't have a story to tell. Well, you do. Because we all may have similar characteristics in our life, but we don't all live the same life. Because if we did, there wouldn't be change in the world. I'm just saying. So maybe write about your heritage, or you could write even about what if you went to pre-K, you could write about your schooling. So how was elementary for you, middle school, high school, Did you have it where you went from primary school to high school? Because not everywhere has a middle school. You could talk about your vacations. You could talk about your biggest accomplishment in your books. You could write about which day was just not the best. You honestly could write anything about. You could write about anything. And remember, books come in all sizes, like people do. They could be short, they could be tall, they could be long. They could be any size that you want. And keep that in mind when you create a book, because it's your book. You are the author. You have the most control over it because it is yours. And don't let anyone else tell you that it's not, because it's your ideas in the book, or it's your story. You may get an idea from someone, but what you're writing, that's yours. That came from within you. And honestly, nobody could write the same book that someone wrote without knowing about it. Because God gives us these ideas for a purpose. And mainly it's because we're the only ones that could write this idea, that could talk about this idea, create a story that people will listen and learn from. Yeah. So that's my $1 million idea of turning it into a $1 billion idea. $1 billion profit. That's a better phrasing. Right. Thank you for joining in today. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and leave a like. And when you subscribe to my video, you'll be subscribing to Monday videos where we talk about God, give advice of how to apply God into your life and how to trust Him, why to trust Him, and how to communicate with God, and just learn more about God. I used "and" way too much, but that's all right. And then Saturdays is where I do a random upload, and I know I am aware that that's like, you don't know what that is. So I'll give an example. Well, first, I say random uploads is because I honestly don't know what I'm going to upload until like the day prior. But I've been recently doing a spoken word where I just talk about an aspect in my life, some sort of idea that got me to write it down in one of my journals, and I just share it with y'all. You could find baking, cooking videos, crafts, which are art, fitness videos. Usually I do like some fitness lives. What else can you find on Saturday uploads? Additional God videos. I know that there's life videos. I think there's a blooper. I know there's at least one blooper. But yeah, so that's what you'll be getting if you subscribe to my channel. And if you subscribe, it also displays your support for me. So I truly appreciate, and thank you for coming on to this live. All right, so hold up. There we go. Today I'm gonna talk about being in school for over a month while there's a pandemic. So I'm just gonna start from the beginning. Last year in March, it was the Friday before our spring break when we went home, and then found out later that evening that we wouldn't be going back to the high school, the building. And instead we'll be doing our learning all online, which my school hasn't done. I haven't actually experienced that until like last year. So it was quite interesting for everyone. At first, I it was chaotic for finishing the semester. Um, the class curriculum for all my classes did change a bit due to this new experience that was just brought upon us because all of a sudden we're not in person. We don't see our teachers, we don't see our classmates, our friends in person anymore. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And my classwork, we didn't have required Zoom meetings at that time because it was all new to us and the school was still trying to figure everything out, the school district. So I remember for my AP class that we would have meetings just because my teacher really wanted us to do well on the AP test. So that was like a class that I'll see whenever our teacher wanted to meet with us. So that's basically how our Zoom meetings work. We would see our class at a certain time whenever our teachers want to see us. So we did have like a structured schedule for Zoom meetings if teachers chose to do it. But at the same time, it was like optional. You only have a meeting when your teacher says, "Hey, we're having a meeting tomorrow. Be sure to be on class that time." And yeah, but mainly besides that AP class, which for me was nice because it was the first class. Besides having those meetings a few times a week, I think at the most we had like 3. We most likely had the whole time during the week. I just don't quite remember because it was last year. But I do know that we met way more often before the AP test than we did after. So for my other classes, we didn't really meet at all. I know for my science class, we met like once or twice online, and it was quite funny because of what happened. But besides that, it was basically logging into Canvas, making sure that you clicked on every class and you were in there to see if you had any assignments for the day. And be sure to just submit them on time and before the due date. And that was basically how they took attendance and how from March of 2020 to like end of May of 2020. That's how my schooling was basically every day just waking up, having class assignments available at 8 a.m. and then just having them turned in by the end of the day. And I would usually be done around noon, lunchtime, and I would just have free time, which is why I started YouTube in March, just due to the large amount of free time that I had and didn't know what to do. What else? I had something in my head, but I completely forgot about it. That's okay. Let's see. So assignments were I would say the schoolwork was around the same. It's just some things did change just because of the switch from in person and to online all of a sudden. Wasn't really all of a sudden. I remember the Friday before spring break. It was a delayed start because that's when our school district taught the teachers of like how to use Zoom. So we knew like it was coming. We just as students or even the teachers didn't know exactly when. And so it's quite funny to find out later that day after school that, hey, we're all online now. So that was basically my spring schooling for 2022. Oh, what I was going to say is that because of this like almost sudden change, I would say almost sudden, it's most likely sudden change. We didn't have finals, so we got out 3 days before because usually the last 3 days we have our finals. So that was also a bonus to have 3 extra days to my summer. And for my summer, I actually took quite a few summer classes just since now that at that time people weren't really meeting up in person for classes. So I got a graduation requirement out of the way through my high school in June. And also, since that class during June of 2020, we didn't have scheduled meetings at all during those 3 weeks for that class. Um, but instead, we just had assignments. But the way the teacher organized the assignments was that you have to complete the assignment, a certain assignment before the next one is unlocked. So that was nice because basically you could schedule how you yourself could schedule how much you want to do per day for the next 3 weeks since she had everything due on the last day of the course of the class. And there was only like one thing where we had to meet because we had it since it was the class consumer education. So we had to do like a fake interview, but like an interview that will help you. It was basically a real interview. um, a practice interview. That's a better word for it. And so I got feedback from that, and that was really nice. But since there was no meetings during the whole time besides that one interview, which lasted not even for 10 minutes. So, yeah. Um, During that time in June of 2020, besides taking that consumer education course through my high school, I also took another course, which, if it wasn't for the pandemic causing everything to like be online, I wouldn't have done it because the course would have originally took place in somewhere in Pennsylvania, and I don't live in Pennsylvania. So that means I would have to travel, which would have cost a lot more, but I'm glad I took the class since it was online. That's how it was structured as. So it made it more doable for me and for a lot of people as well, because if it wasn't online, I don't think many of the people that took the class with me would have done it either. And the reason why I'm glad I took this class is because due to the amount of speakers I heard, it was very knowledgeable and I gained a lot of information of religion and how to incorporate God into your life and how to like prophesy to people and just like how to help people. It was really nice because Tuesdays and Thursdays, the class required us to go out and prophesy to people, sticking to COVID rules. So you have to like ask people. We had to make sure that we could ask people if it was like a total stranger or just someone you met. If you always should ask someone if they're willing for you to pray over them because it is their life. So I learned how to prophesy, and I did to a few of my friends just because I didn't feel comfortable just quite yet to prophesying over strangers. So I didn't take part in like going out to stores and just asking people, "Hey, can I prophesy for you?" Um, I'm still trying to get used to that. So yeah. And so that was an enjoyable experience. And ironically, those 3 weeks happened during the same time as my consumer education course, which was nice because I learned more about time management in a different aspect than I was used to. And then on top of that, during the same time of June 2020, I took a class through I forgot his name. Oh, I feel so bad. But I took a financial like foundation class and for specifically for teens. So I learned about financing and that was nice because I'm currently taking an accounting course. So it like helps me. But it was like the overall life aspect. So that was really nice to learn. So I took 3 courses in the span of 3 weeks in June 2020, and then July, I stopped doing like schooling. I took some courses online that, oh, the foundation of finance was through Dave Ramsey's course. And so in like July, I took some more of his courses. And that was basically my schooling, but it was like less strict and more light flow. And then August, starting back into doing schooling with my high school, at the beginning it was still online, but we had scheduled Zoom classes which we had to attend. And at first we only had 5 periods a day. So in my school we have 9, so we rotated every day. So the first like Monday and Wednesday we would have classes 1 through 5, and then Tuesday and Thursday 6 through 9, and then early bird right after 9. And then Friday we will have everything. So that was interesting, but because I always ended early because my period was 5th. So I technically only had 4 periods a day. My lunch was 5th period, still is. And so I only had 4 periods a day during that time, besides like Friday, which was at the time optional Zoom days. And it was basically like the spring, just more structured in Zoom meetings. So yeah. And then there was a time, I would say either October or November, where we switched and started having classes every day, all your classes every day, and there was an option to go in person for 2 days or 3 days a week. So we have like Monday, Tuesday were A days in the A group. And depending which group you were in was based on your last name. And group E was all kids who like were staying at home and not going to school, doing hybrid. So you had an option. And then B days were Wednesday and Thursday, and then Fridays were days that rotated between the A group and B group. I took part in that for the first week, and then I was like, I didn't like how like some of the times I was in school, some of the times I was home. To me, I didn't like it. So after those 2 days of being in school, I just continued doing e-learning. And it was like that up until I would say sometime until last week. Last week was when it was where you're either in school or online. There was no like hybrid option, and I chose to stay online, so e-learning, while some like 75% of the students at my school were 5 days a week at the high school. So it was interesting because the Zoom classes cut in half, and it was like, huh, okay. In my opinion, the reason why I chose e-learning was just because there's like 30-ish more days left in the school year and I'm quite comfortable of how my setup is at home, so I just continued doing that and just end the year at doing e-learning. Because to me, I didn't quite see the point of going back to in school if it's gonna be the same thing of how 3/4 of the class is in person while some are still on Zoom. So, in either way, I'll still be in front of a screen since the work is usually on our school iPads. So, like, there isn't much change. And I guess a bonus of being in e-learning is that, like, now I could do it live since it is my lunch period. Well, if I was in school, I wouldn't be able to do this. And a main thing for me why I actually didn't choose to go in person is that we can't eat during our classes due to, like, you have to keep your mask on. Um, well, before the pandemic, depending on your teacher, you could eat during your class. So I'm used to having like some snacks throughout the day and not having a big lunch. While the 2 days I did experience at my high school in person, we weren't allowed. We still, I'm pretty sure that the people in person are still not allowed to like have snacks during classes. You're only allowed to eat during your lunch. And even though I was aware that that was the only time I got to eat during my lunch period, um, I'm not a type of person who like consumes a lot at once. I'd rather have like portions throughout the day. So it like threw off my eating habit and it kind of messed with me a little bit. It wasn't healthy for me. So I didn't choose in person. um, what else about schooling? Oh, I haven't had a final since January 2020. And I find it to be quite nice. For this year's first semester, we didn't have days off. Instead, we just continued having school, and it was our teacher's choice if they want to do like a test or of some sort. And I know for like my math class, we had this like packet that it was optional to complete, and you will receive extra credit if you do, and it went over all the 5 units that we already did in first semester, and it was like nice because that's basically whatever was in that packet would have been on our final. But first semester, none of my teachers choose to do a final. I think mainly because it would be weird. Um, no, I think it's mainly because they didn't want people to cheat or like to have the people at school have a disadvantage because at the people at home it would be easier to cheat. So I guess they just didn't want to take that chance because of the unfairness between students at home and students in person. Um, oh, a thing for some of my classes is that when we're testing, we have to like we have to have a separate device to display like our workspace and take our test on our iPad. So that's a way of how the teachers eliminated cheating in some sort, what for the like people at home, which is actually like good in my opinion. The only problem I would see with that if like someone doesn't have a second device to use, which I understand. So yeah. um, and then for this semester, the second semester, we're not having finals like last May. Um, so if you don't have a D or F in a class, you get to have those last 3 days off since those last 3 days for high schoolers are usually finals at my school district. So that's nice because we get to start somewhere earlier. Um, that's all I have right now. I didn't really structure this now that I realize, but I try to keep some sort of flow, some sort of reasoning through this. Reasoning? Try to keep it chronologically, even though I kind of skipped between first semester of this school year and the semester I'm currently in. But yeah, so that's how schooling during a pandemic over a year has been for me. um, I don't know how next year will look like. I kind of hope that it's somewhat back to normal because I do miss being in person and like having and like make connections with other people in your class, because now it's just like doesn't really exist. So yeah. And if you do choose to subscribe, you would be subscribing to like Monday videos. Today there's like I got video talking. What did I talk about today? Hold up. Can't seem. I don't remember. That's okay. What? I'm going to research what was the video posted today. Let's see. It was, it's about relationships and what you need to know to understand about relationships. I would say you should go watch that, because it's basically about how don't let people control your life just because you change like your relationship status with that person now. Because it is still your life and your choices. Okay, so that was like, those are like my typical Monday videos where we talk about God and how to put him into our life and create a relationship with him and how to imply that in our lives. And then Saturdays, I always say random videos, but that's because it's a random upload. It's whatever I feel like uploading that week. So recently, spoken word, which you see if you have been subscribing and checking up on my uploads. And you'll also be subscribing to random lives throughout the week or throughout the month, like today. And be sure to like and comment what was your favorite part about this video, this live. And thank you for joining, and bye, y'all. Shouldn't say that, but hi. All right. Oh, I have to go to the first page of my notes. Okay, so today we are going to talk about how to study for tests. So I have a few things to go over, or like 4 main topics, basically. So something I suggest is that after every class you have is that you'll rewrite your notes into a designated notebook for that class, and make sure to one, you could just have it in one color, and if you're not a person who likes to use color during your notes, don't like to have color coordination, then I suggest writing in a blue pen, because blue tends to help your brain remember things more. But if you like to use color, then you could either like have different color highlighters, or you could have different color pens. Okay. Let's put these back to where they were. And the way I use my colors are by having a certain color for definition, having a certain color for headings or subheadings, having one color for, what was I going to say, place, people, events, dates that I would need to remember. But if it's something that like a teacher said, I need to remember this, that's where I'll highlight it. And usually I would highlight it green, because I don't know, green's just been my color lately for highlighting. So yeah. And what else? Okay, so if you have to remember definition, words, same as definition, people, place, things, events, or examples, because sometimes your teacher gives you an example to help you on something, I suggest using flashcards. And you could have different sizes of flashcards depending on what you like. And what you could do with these flashcards is actually make it a little game. So once you have your word, your place, event, whatever you have here, and then on the back you'll have your definition. And you could place this on the floor or on the table and have the words facing you, so you only see the words. And every time you get it correct, you could move it to the left saying, I got this right. But every time you get it wrong, and the way you lay these on the table or on the floor is just run right next to each other like this. So once you get this one correct, it'll go over there. But if you get it wrong, it goes behind and at the end of the line, basically meaning you'll come back to it. And that'll happen every time. And if you want, on a sheet of paper, like a scratch sheet of paper, you could tally how many times you had to basically put one word at the end of the line before you got it correct, to see which one do you really have to focus more. And you could do this like depending when your test is, either like every day or every week or twice a week, to see your progress throughout your class. Oh, and a major thing is don't study the day before the test. No, you want to study basically once you start your new unit, or your new unit. But I forgot bringing it down, but that's all right. If you don't want to use flashcards, I'm just going to show it how to do it on a flashcard, but you would take a sheet of paper, like lined paper or even printed paper, and you'll fold it in half. And if you want, you could, so if you have it folded in half, you could cut it if you want and have a word here, and then you like open it to have the definition. Or you could have it where you fold the paper behind itself instead of in front. For the first example, you would have to do it in front. So if you were to go behind, then you would just fold it, have your definition, and then your word, definition on the back, and then just flip it if you don't want to cut. So that's another example. But if you don't want to make anything, or you don't want to use paper, that's totally fine. Another example that you could do is always make a Quizlet. And the reason why I prefer Quizlet sometimes is because, one, is kind of easier to type everything than hand write everything, even though I do suggest handwriting, because you tend to remember more when you're like physically writing the words instead of typing, but it just depends on what type of learner you are. And not every way is going to work for you. Some of the times, the few things I suggested work for me, other times not so much. But when I use Quizlet, there's like different games. And that's one thing I like, is because when you put in a word in your definition, there's like a thing called Learn It, or where you just basically typing the definition or the word depending on the setting you have it. So, and then I think there's like a Meteorite game where you have to type in the word before it gets to like the bottom of your screen. And that's like, if you're a gamer, that's a nice way to learn. And it's fun because in a way you somewhat forget that you're learning because you're having fun, but at the same time you are learning. So yeah. But if you don't, what was I gonna say? Oh, right. Another tactic is that you could reread your reading assignments, or any reading that your teacher gave you, or any reading. It doesn't have to be like assigned, but just that it was provided to you or you found it somewhere. And summarize each paragraph to like 1 to 3 sentences in your own words, because when you summarize, even if it's a sentence per paragraph, that you are basically putting the information of this chapter, this unit, into your own words, making it easier for you to memorize it. Because when you put it into your own words, you will most likely, it's easier for you to memorize it than just memorizing every word that someone else wrote. And that won't be very helpful if you have like an essay coming up. So, yeah. But another thing is while you're reading your assignments or rereading, you could also have sticky notes and write important events and key topics or information that your teachers say, hey, you might want to write this down because it possibly will be on the test. And if a teacher says that, that means it most likely will be on the test. But many people won't write it down. And when you do, you may be a handful of people that get that right on the test. So, yeah. And then, yeah. So those were my four things. Four major topics of how to prepare for your test. I'll just remind you all what they were. So rewrite your notes with blue pen if you just like to have everything in one color, or use like a color or have a color key to help you memorize it, because sometimes color just helps you memorize things more, especially when each color has a meaning. When you're using color to study different colors, make sure that each color has a purpose and you're not just doing it to make it look pretty. Because yes, you can make your notes look nice and everything, but the purpose of why I like highlight in different colors or write in different pen colors, is because to me each color has a meaning, and it's just easier for me to like, if I have to find a definition, then I look for dark red and for the word, and the definition will actually be in a shade of green. And I just memorize it like that. Or for when it comes to things in parentheses, I use dark blue, or anything highlighted, anything that was originally bolded in the text, I would do in light blue, saying that the reading found this thing important. So, yeah. And then the next tactic was, again, the flashcards, or having a piece of paper and folding it in half, using scissors if you fold it forward, having the word and then the definition underneath, or when you fold it backwards and just not use scissors. Same thing, word on top and then definition on the bottom. Or just using Quizlet and trying out the different games, seeing which game works for you and which one is more productive for you, because sometimes the games are games, but like sometimes you could lose the meaning, the purpose of why you're actually doing it. So sometimes one thing may work for one thing, but for another not so much. And then rereading your assignments, and to make sure, one, you're refreshing the stuff that you learned at the beginning of the unit chapter and connecting it towards the information you now have at the end of the chapter, and then having your sticky notes handy, especially during class, or just always have sticky notes next to you, because you never know when you're gonna need a sticky note. So, yeah. So those are the study tips I have. If I have more, I'll make sure to make a video about it, but please subscribe for more videos. Like yesterday, it was Monday, so there was a video about God. And then I also did another live yesterday, which y'all should go check out, is basically how to make sure you have enough money for your life. And then Saturdays, those are like my random upload days where there's like a random video. Lately, it's been spoken word. And once in a while, I may go live. So, yeah. So if you want to be notified when I go live, be sure to hit the notification bell and leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And please comment what you found helpful, if you found any of these study tips helpful, or if you have any of your own study tips that you would like to share, or for me to like add into another study video. So yeah, bye y'all and have a great day, and God loves you. Bye. Hello today. So today I am going to talk about why I think everyone should write a book, and also how to start off creating a book, specifically a nonfiction book. Because for me, I am like, okay, I want to write this book, but I don't know where to start. So I'll talk about that after I explain why everyone should write a book. So, first, you should write a book because it could clear your mind. Because at times, at least for me, I think a lot throughout the day, and just having these thoughts written down somewhere eases my mind, because sometimes I just don't want to talk to anyone, or yeah. Sometimes I just want the thoughts to myself at the moment, so I write them down, and those thoughts could be used as ideas for books. Also, another reason is that to share stories. And the reason why you could share stories, why you should write a book and share these stories that you have in your mind, these ideas, is because God gives us ideas to write a book. It doesn't have to be personally for us, because sometimes God will give you this idea to write a book, like this one idea, and you're just wondering, why this idea, God? Like, I don't understand how it corresponds to me at this moment, or why I should even be writing this. But if God gives you an idea, go with it, trust in God, because when He gives you the idea, it doesn't have to write a book. It doesn't personally have to be for you, but He gives you the idea to share it with others through writing or through any form He wants you to share the idea. God gives you a certain idea because He wants you to create a story, the book, because He knows that everyone writes differently. We all have our own form of writing, our own form when it comes to writing, our own creative way, and you may not even realize that. But He gives you the idea, the story to write, to be told through your writing, because He knows He could, if He gives the idea, the story to someone else, it won't be done as well as it would be through your writing. He gives it to you because He understands that through your writing, people will see God through your work, even if the story isn't initially about God. But if you do choose to read the book and the story, then one, you're obeying God. So that's always good. And two, if you ever come to a moment where you just where you explain how you got this idea and you mention God, some people will be like, you know what? I had a feeling that it was from God, but I wasn't quite sure, since God wasn't involved in the story, and He doesn't have to be, because technically He is, even if He isn't mentioned in your writing, because He gave you the idea. And this will help people, because sometimes people will go to books instead of people for help, because they find it easier. That's just how they naturally are. And so by writing and having people connect to the characters and seeing how the characters got out of the struggle, out of the tough times, gives people more faith to get out of their own, and to keep having that thought that the struggle, the bad stuff are not gonna last forever. It's just, it may seem like it's a big deal, and that it won't, and that it will take forever to overcome, but compared to the amount of great days, the amount of sunshines that everyone will have throughout their life, the bad stuff is like this. It just may all happen at once, and that's okay because God doesn't give you something that you cannot handle. So just remember that everything that's occurring in your life, even though it seems like it's not gonna stop, it will one day because God doesn't want you to suffer. So yeah. And now on to like how to write this book. Well, one, you could brainstorm. And a way you could brainstorm is by first writing down your book topic. Like, what is this book going to be about? Right? And then when it comes to like a fictional book, make sure you understand where the climax would be in your story. Like, what's going to happen at the peak of the story, around the middle. Usually it's around the middle. And what's like gonna be the major problem, the major events throughout the story? How is it gonna end? So the conclusion. Also, when it comes to a fictional book, find out at least one main theme that will occur throughout your book. So a theme, So what's gonna be the main message of your book, of the story? So like an example can be how in the story people aren't communicating as well, but then at one point after struggle and trial, they realize they need to communicate and they get the job done way more efficiently. So the theme would be communication helps people to understand each other as well as working more efficiently together. So yeah. And then find out your setting and your scene. So if it's a fictional story, what is like the world? Is it like how the world is today? Is it in the past? Is it in the future? Is it tropical? Is it cold? Is it mild? And yeah, so find out the time, the climate, the culture, and like if it's like who's in charge of everybody. Is there a leader? Is there not? This is all things to like think of that could help you write your story. As well as you could just start writing whenever you have an idea pop into your mind. So just write it down, even if it doesn't make sense right now, that's okay. It doesn't have to. And then another way is to have a character list. So just typing out all the characters. You could start off by like just numbering them, like female 1, main character 1, male 1, or side character 1, or antagonist 1, protagonist 1. Oh, protagonist is like your hero and antagonist is your villain. Just to clarify for those who do not know, and it's okay because now you know. And when it comes to this character list, it doesn't have to be something like grand or anything. It's just something for you to understand and to organize all your characters in your story so you do not get them confused, because that may happen when you're writing, and that's totally fine. So what could be on this character list is if the character is a side or main character, if they're protagonist or antagonist, as well as I was going to say role, but I already described some of the roles, but also have like some characteristics of the character. So you can have a character development, and these characteristics, you do not have to list this in your story, but they can help you as a writer to be like, oh, the person could say this, but that's not their personality. So instead, I'll write this to make it seem like the character is like a real person. And it will be easier for the audience to connect to your story when you do know how the character would like talk or act, or even, what's another one? Just the character's personality. What do they like? What do they dislike? When is their birthday? Like a general timeline, a general like a month or the season, or how do they act um, towards a certain topic? Are they sensitive to a topic because of what happened to their past, but nobody knows about it because they just keep it to themselves? And later on, through signs of the character being like pushing the subject away when it's matching up, and other characters will finally learn why that character is like so closed off to the subject or doesn't want to talk about it. um or maybe the character will never reveal why, and you'll just leave the audience on a cliffhanger. So yeah. Also, another thing to think about when you're writing is, do you want to have cliffhangers? Do you want to have the story end or a chapter end where it leaves the audience wondering and not giving them all the information until the next chapter, or just never mention it in the book and just have the audience wondering what happened, or like why that happened, or just why? Because it is good to leave the audience wondering and having them think for themselves of what possibly could happen, because then you're making your audience think and not just like reading the story, you know? You're getting your audience more engaged into the story being told. So yeah. So on the character list, you want your character development. How are these characters, especially the main character, how are they gonna change from the beginning to the end? Like, what is the audience going to know at the beginning of the story, but then find out more or get to know the character towards the end? Where's that change going to be? And is it going to be sprinkled throughout the book? Is it going to happen all at the beginning or all at the middle or end? Or is it just going to be a mystery, but at the same time, you want to give your audience some sort of intel on the characters, especially the main characters? For the side characters, depending on how your story is, you don't have to develop them that much, but you should at least be clear on what their roles are in the story. So when do these side characters come in, and why would they come in at this time? You know? And you want to, when it comes to your main characters, another thing you could add to the character list is that you could have a background, not a background on your characters. So basically, why the characters are who they are, and how did they get to this point, and does that cause them to act a certain way, and did that change their personality? So yeah. And finally, you want to brainstorm, what is the story goal? What is the goal that God gave you to writing this book? Did he give you to share it with others to help them? Or, the story goal. So why is the story occurring? Like, what's the main goal? An example could be is that the main character or a few main characters have this task that they have to complete a quest. But for some reason, they aren't able to complete it, or they aren't even able to start it until they find out this main thing, the key thing that they needed to be able to work with each other efficiently. And that main thing could be communication. And so the main goal could be trying to complete this task. But the theme could be, you can't complete anything with each other without having communication, because otherwise it's just a jumbled mess. So yeah. So that's what I have for y'all today. Thank you for joining, and be sure to check out my other videos. Feel free to leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and comment what others tactics that you have in creating a fictional story, or other reasons why you created a book, a story, and how has God helped you with your writing process. And be sure to subscribe because there could be, I do lives randomly throughout the week, month, or whenever I want. So be sure to hit the notification bell to be notified when I do go live, as well as Mondays we talk about God, and Saturdays we just recently basically been talking about my life in a way, but like through a story setting. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. It was great. So yeah, bye y'all. Okay. Okay. I keep saying okay, and I was just about to. But yeah, anyways. So today we're going to talk about why doing your schoolwork, your assignments is important, and how it could benefit you, like the opportunities that it could lead to you, as well as why sometimes we won't do our schoolwork or other things. So, first and foremost, always ask God what are you gifted at? And by doing your schoolwork, it will always prepare you for class. By doing your assignments before class, by being more focused during class, doing the extra assignments, even if you don't want to, because it will benefit you, because the more you learn about each of your subjects, the more you'll learn what you will like. And at first, you may not like the thing that you'll end up pursuing or that will end up being in your job, but over time in doing all your assignments, even when you don't want to, you'll learn more about the subject than you do when you just don't do anything. Because then, if you don't do any of your assignments, then yeah, you're not gonna like it because you don't understand it. But when you actually start doing your assignment, your work that that whoever is teaching your course or wherever you're doing it is needing you to do the assignments, or they may give you, hey, here's a sheet of paper. It's not an assignment, but yeah, do those worksheets, whatever your teacher gives you, your professor, because one, it may end up being on the test even though the professor didn't assign it in the first place. By doing your schoolwork, you will learn what you are gifted at and find what you may want to pursue in the future. Also, keep asking God for help. Like asking him, what am I gifted at? You could ask him, what will help me for the future? Or you could ask, what do I need in order to pursue my destiny? Or you could ask, what will help me to achieving my goals or his goals, him being God, the goals he has for you. So yeah. And then when you don't feel like doing it, or there's like some reason that you don't want to complete these assignments or don't want to do things throughout your day, this may be due to the fear of just in general, fear that just stops you from completing what you need to do. And sometimes this is caused by caring too much of what others may think of you, which could lead you to not doing what you need to do or not doing it efficiently, doing something poorly. And this is not great because when you take people's input and you ask them, should I do this? And these people are unqualified, meaning there's someone who doesn't know about the topic or doesn't use it, not educated in the topic, or do not work in the industry or position, or someone who has never done it, then these people are not qualified into answering your questions about the topic, about the situation, the subject, because they don't have the right knowledge to give you, and their response may attack you, and it's not going to be the best response for you because you're asking people who are not qualified to give you the answer to these questions. So sometimes asking people for permission to doing something could result you into not doing something because another person won't see the topic, the idea, the situation, the subject. They won't think or see it the way you do. And so by asking a qualified person is someone who works in the industry or position, who is educated, so they have effectively studied the topic, the situation, or they have experienced it and they learned how to succeed from the experience. So those are qualified people to ask, and those people are always better to ask. So when you have a question, always search for the person who is qualified to answer and not just some person you see randomly on the street. Because when you ask a person who is underqualified to be answering your question, then sometimes you end up, so say you're here, and if you asked a qualified person, then you would be here. But if you asked an unqualified person, then you could be worse than you started, and that's not good. And if you can't find a qualified person, God is a qualified person for anything. So you could ask him and jot down whatever possibly comes through your head or what happens throughout the day, any signs that indicates to you that that's from God. And sometimes it may not come as quick as you think it will, as if you were having a conversation with another person, because God works, he communicates with us how he wants to. Sometimes it could be like having a conversation with another individual, and sometimes you just have to keep your eyes open and make sure that whatever is happening, that you ask God, hey, is that you? And making sure that that isn't something that just happened because it just did. So be aware and understand everything that occurs. Well, sometimes if you don't, how should I word this? Sometimes it's best to not talk to anyone and just do it. But when you're doing this and you don't want someone to say, hey, you're not doing something all day just because you didn't tell anyone, then keep a notebook and write down everything you did that day that you didn't tell anybody, because you don't need to. You don't have to tell everyone or even an individual everything you did throughout a day. But you could keep a notebook that has everything written of what you did that nobody knows besides you and God. And make sure to write the date of it before you start writing it, just so you don't have to worry about knowing which day is which and how much you completed in one day that you didn't tell anybody. So, and when somebody does come to you and say, hey, you didn't do anything today, or you don't do anything throughout your days, you could show them the notebook and say, just because I don't tell people everything I do throughout the day does not mean I do nothing throughout my days. Because it's not what the people know and understand. People don't need to know what you do every day, but they have to understand that you are doing something. They don't have to know the details, but one day they will understand that you weren't just wasting your time or not doing anything when based on how successful, not how, based on your success success that you will achieve in the future, and they'll realize, what was that person doing all these years? And they may wonder, and people will always wonder of each other. And some people will still think you did nothing, but that's okay because those people aren't the ones that matter. Those aren't the people that you need. You need the people who understand, hey, I know I may not see everything you do or may not know everything you do, but I know you are a hard worker. You're someone who wants to achieve their goals, wants to pursue the path, the story that God gave you, and you're doing that by whatever you do behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, when I said that, it's I'm referring to what people do not see, what people do not know, what you do throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month. And things that you do not tell people, it doesn't have to be like 10 things. It could just be one thing that you didn't tell somebody, or it could be something like, hey, I brushed my teeth today and I didn't have to tell. And that's not like something you would tell somebody, but you still did it, even though nobody asked you, or you didn't tell anybody, or nobody watched you do it. It's just something you do, and that's something that you should be proud of because it's one task, even if it's like part of your morning routine. That's okay. It's still something. Don't think that the things that you don't tell people that you do every day have to be like something grand. It could be something small, because people who become successful start out by focusing on the small things that later turn into things that are big and ginormous, or will lead to things that are big and ginormous. So yeah. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for joining, and thank you for watching this video, and be sure to subscribe to find out when I go live next. And you could be notified by hitting the notification bell whenever I go live, if that made sense. And you also be subscribing to videos that will appear Monday and Saturday. And be sure to leave a like and a comment of what was your takeaway from this video, or what did you enjoy, what do you not like, what do you think was beneficial or helpful. So yeah, thank you for joining me here today, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, y'all.